So, let's see how you could try to make your storytelling a little bit more exciting and engaging. And the way that I'm going to suggest that is by sharing 6 possible ways that you can add to your story as you tell it, or for things for you to think about as you're telling the story. And to do this, I'm going to use the story of Ma Liang. This is a very famous Chinese folk tale, and it's about a boy, Ma Liang, and he gets given a magic paintbrush. He loves to draw, but he's only so poor he doesn't have a paintbrush at the start of the story, just uses a stick to draw in the dirt. But one day he wishes for a paintbrush, and this gentleman with a long white beard comes along and gives him a paintbrush. And when he draws, when he draws on the paper, then the lines move. This is where I get to do my water sleeves impersonation. The lines on the paper move, and as they do, ta-da! Magic. The lines come alive, and there is a real rooster or whatever it is that he's drawn. So one day, after he's been helping the people in his village, along come some soldiers and say, Ma Liang, you must come with us to the palace. Why, says Ma Liang, because the emperor wants to see you. That's not very exciting, is it? So let's see, how can I now add and help you to see and become involved with the story? So the first thing, let's think about colors. As we had such bright colors, and this is a story about painting, why don't we add some colors? One day, Ma Liang suddenly saw coming towards him a group of soldiers. They were dressed in bright blue uniforms with gold frogging down the front. Their trousers had a yellow stripe down the sides, and on their heads, big black helmets with a silver crest. They came up to Ma Liang and said, "You, boy, are you Ma Liang?" Let's change now and think about sizes. The soldier towered over Ma Liang, who looked and said, "Yes, I am." "Good, then come with us. The emperor wants to see you." And the soldier stretched out an enormous hand and grabbed hold of the boy's tiny arm and pulled him close. "Follow us," they said, and began to frog march the boy towards the palace. When they arrived, Ma Liang couldn't believe it. It was very big. No, I tell a lie. It wasn't big, it was enormous. No, I tell a lie, it wasn't enormous, it was huge. No, I tell a lie, it wasn't huge, it was vast. I don't know how many rooms he had inside that palace, but there must have been a lot. Now let's think not just about the visual things, the colors, the sizes, but let's also think about the other senses, sounds and smells. It's often very easy when you start telling stories that we think about just what we can see, but don't neglect the other senses too. So let's see what happens as Ma Liang goes through the palace. There were 2 great bronze doors that swung open, as if by magic. As he approached, Ma Liang went underneath the archway and found himself in an enormous courtyard. There were blacksmiths, chang, 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 making swords. There were soldiers marching up and down, stamp, 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 stamp. Archers practicing their archery, firing arrows into a target. Ma Liang was led across the yard, under another archway, and into another courtyard. And there, oh, what wonderful smells! Yes, he could hear coming from the kitchens the sounds of meat sizzling in the wok. He could smell the garlic as it was being cooked. And was that some thyme? And oh yes, it smelt so delicious. Another archway, another courtyard, and there were the beautiful young ladies of the court practicing their dance steps to the sound of the gudgeon and the pipa. Another archway, another courtyard, but this was very special, for this was a garden. Ma Liang could hear sounds of birdsong, running water. There was a little water wheel turning as the water bubbled along. And suddenly, there was the emperor. Now we're coming to a scene between the emperor and Ma Liang, and there's going to be a lot of dialogue. And dialogue is, absolutely a storyteller's friend, because you can put so much expression into the way that people speak. And if you like to characterize the different people in the scene, find a different voice, use your chest voice perhaps, or a head voice for a younger character. Okay, then there's that as well. But what I want to focus on now is the different words that we would use for speaking. And you can model that. You don't want to just use the he said, he said, he said, he said. Okay, so Ma Liang's about to come to the emperor. "Sir," sneered the emperor, "you are the boy with a magic paintbrush. Paint for me a tree full of golden coins." "No, I won't," stammered Ma Liang. "What?" roared the emperor. "How dare you? I am your emperor. Paint me a picture," ordered the emperor, "of a tree with golden coins, or else I will destroy your village," he threatened. "But that's not fair," protested Ma Liang. "Why should I paint for you a tree full of golden coins?" cried the boy. "Because otherwise you will suffer along with all your friends. Throw him into prison." And poor Ma Liang was thrown into a tiny cell. Let's now focus on the feelings and the emotions of the character in the story. Poor Ma Liang, he was so scared. The emperor was so mean and fierce. And he was worried too, because if he didn't paint that tree, then all his friends in the village would suffer. But he was determined. He had to find a way that he could teach the emperor a lesson and somehow get away. And suddenly, of course, excitedly, he thought, my paintbrush, I can paint something. And he began to think, what could he draw? Yes, he would draw a key. And so he took the paintbrush and he drew that key. And no sooner had he finished drawing than the lines on the paper moved, and there was the key. And now, confidently, very confidently, he took that key, put it in the lock, and opened the door. He looked out. He could see the guards at the end of the corridor talking amongst themselves. And now as he makes his escape, the last thing that I'd like to think about is ways of moving. Years ago, when my son was in primary 1, he came home and he had an assignment and he had to write an 80-word story based on 4 pictures. And when he'd done, he was very excited. He came and said, "Look, Dad, 88 words. He'd counted them. And when I went through, I saw that he used the word went 11 times out of the 88. Yeah. So he really needed to do some work on synonyms for go. And that's what I'm going to focus on now as Ma Liang makes his escape. Ma Liang tiptoed down the corridor until suddenly, clang, 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 prisoner escaping. Ma Liang raced along the corridor, went climbing up the stairs, boom, 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 up into the sunlight. He looked around. How could he get away? He decided, I know, I'll draw. Not, as a boy suggested once to me, a helicopter, but a horse. And no sooner had he finished drawing than the lines on the paper wriggled, and there was a horse, a fine black stallion. Ma Liang jumped on its back, dug in his heels, and galloped away, underneath the first archway, underneath the second, under the third. He saw the great doors begin to swing closed, but he raced on and squeezed between them and out, galloping away across the plain as fast as he could. But behind him came the emperor and all his soldiers in hot pursuit. They were getting closer and closer. Ma Liang thought, what can he do? He leapt from his horse and he knelt down in the ground and he drew a hole. And no sooner had he finished drawing with his paintbrush the hole than the lines on the paper shimmered and a hole appeared and grew wider and deeper and wider and deeper and wider and deeper. And the emperor and all his soldiers, kaboom, 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 fell into that hole and tumbled to their deaths and were never seen again. So you can see, by adding colours, sizes, other senses, the sounds, the smells, thinking about the ways that we speak, adding our emotions and our feelings, then we can make the story become more vivid and help the audience to really visualize what is happening. Another way that you can add to the story to make your voice more expressive is to what I call color your words. What do I mean by coloring your words? It's very simple. It means saying a word in such a way as to reflect its meaning. So for example, I wouldn't say whisper, I would say whisper. I wouldn't say falling, I would say falling. Okay. Loud, obviously, is loud. Quick. Heavy. And you can play with it. There's no right answer or wrong answer. It's very much about you just seeing how can you animate the word and bring it to life. Of course, you don't use this for every word. The sun was high in the sky, shining. No, it's too much. Pick your words, the words that you want to color. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flash up some words on the screen. Maybe you'd like to try saying these words. You could, of course, just mute. Why don't you do that? And mute the audio, and then you can try it as the words come up. But I'll also demo for you. Growled. Excitedly. Bouncing. Ooze. Shyly. Huge. Vainly. Proudly. Quick. Long. So, whenever you're telling a story, just think about the words that you're using and feel free to play with them, have fun with them. And you'll be modeling for your child so that the next time that their teacher asks them to stand up in front of the class and to share something, they'll remember and they'll start to play with their words too. And of course, if your story involves animals, then of course all the animal sounds are another real gift to a storyteller. So very important, go away now and practice on your quack and moo and oink and meow and woof and growl and roar and cock-a-doodle-doo and have a lot of fun in the process. I mentioned briefly as I was telling the story of Ma Liang, how you might want to change your voice to suit the characters in the story. And so what can you do? One, as I said, you could use your chest voice and make it a little deeper down here, or you could throw it up into your head voice and make it a lighter voice, or come back to your normal voice. You could think about the quality of your voice, whether you want to make it more raspy and growly. You wouldn't want to do this for a big character, someone who's going to do a lot of talking, because A, it's not very pleasant to hear, is it? And it will strain your voice after a while. So that probably just to come in now and again, a character perhaps like a giant who might have a few lines of dialogue, or as the witch, for example, make it more nasal. The other thing is to think about the rhythm of your character. So, for example, if you're doing the story of the rabbit and the tortoise, or the hare and the tortoise, then the hare, for example, he might be a very fast and quite jerky little character. And when he's talking, you would want to be very rapid, but then find those times when you would stop very naturally, because he's turning around and looking and seeing what he could possibly do. On the other hand, the tortoise would have a much more deliberate way of speaking, and he would think very carefully about what he wanted to say. But of course you wouldn't want to keep with the tortoise for too long, because otherwise that could get very boring. Likewise, you wouldn't want to be with the hare for too long, because it might be a bit difficult to understand. So that's why you need to build into the way that the hare is speaking those kind of breaks that would allow the people who are listening to catch up and understand what it is that he's possibly talking about. But as you can see, it makes a very fun contrast between the two different characters. Okay? Yeah, I think we've got that quite clearly now. So have fun and think about the kind of voice that you want to use for your characters.